I'm hopeful that I'll get some type of fair hearing before any execution date is set. But without some type of fair hearing, I don't think I'll make it through the year.
Devastating and moving pretty fast in directions I was having a problem trying to really even comprehend what was going on.
I talk to people who've lived here their whole lives and they say, oh yeah, I remember something about that, but they're not really familiar with what happened. They don't know the facts. They don't know, because I think that if people really understood what happened in this case, they would be outraged.
We believe that his initial statement was true. He made an advance toward his cousin romantically. She fell off the bridge. Her sister dived in to help. That's what he originally said. It was an accident. Nobody meant to kill anybody, and that's what happened. They turned the story around when they found out some black guys were on the bridge.
What about the suspect police first arrested and charged? Advocates for Clemens wonder about that original confession from the victim's cousin.
Cummins never confessed with any detail or any whatsoever. He blurted out in the middle of an interrogation, okay, I did it.
I'm coming. When the incident first happened, he was the initial suspect. And his story, basically they ended up, him and the sisters, they ended up on the bridge allegedly to go and read a poem that one of them had written up there. They went with no flashlight around 11:45 on a dark April night, low moon. And his first story was that Julie was sitting on the railing of the bridge and that he had made a romantic advance towards her, and she was startled and fell back off the railing into the river, and that her sister tried to jump in after and tried to save her, and both of them ended up drowning.
We didn't have any defensive wounds on us, whereas Thomas Cummins did have defensive wounds on him. He had a scratch on his face, ink pen marks on his arm, and a sore midsection.
Well, it's one of St. Louis's most well-known cases in the past 2 decades, the murders of Robin and Julie Curry, thrown from the Chain of Rocks Bridge.
You know, it goes all the way back to Emmett Till. It goes back to a number of cases that are more notable than even the Chain of Rocks case. But it's a thing that really most folks who are trying to stoke that, you know, that little ember, know that they can get a rise out of people. And so most people remember it was a negative thing that happened on that bridge and some black boys were involved.
I'm convinced he's guilty because I think there was a valid confession. Valid confession.
And he grabs a book and he's testing it for its weight. And I'm thinking to myself, I just know he's not about to hit me. And before I could get that thought in my head, wham, he hits me dead center on the top of my head. Like I said, they were professionals. They knew what to do not to show bruisings on the face and on the...
Because I had explained to them that yes, we were on the bridge, and yes, we did talk to them, but we had left. And he didn't want to accept that as an answer. And that's when I realized that I wasn't hurt just for no questioning. And that's when he started saying, we know what you did. And he started telling me all these different things that I supposed to had done to the people that we had seen up there on the bridge. And that's when he started beating me, and they started beating me and telling me that they wanted me to make a tape and that I was going to tell them what they wanted to hear. And I knew that, I'm saying, I felt like they'd sit there and they'd just keep on beating me until I was unconscious. They beat me for 7 hours.
These are the same 2 cops, continue to come up 3 separate times, 3 separate instances, and none of that was brought forth in the trial. Obviously, Tom Cummins being the state's star witness, they were not going to bring up the fact that he had filed suit and won a sealed settlement while he's sitting on stage, on the stand, as their star witness. He had a sealed settlement coming to him of about $150,000 as a reported amount.
Now, I went to all 3 trials. I didn't see him marked on Thomas Cummins. I'm sorry, but if he was beaten of any injuries worth $150,000 cash, well, why is it that court record is sealed? I tried finding it down in the federal courthouse, but it's not there. The last time I checked, that's supposed to be public record.
One of the original investigating officers, Mike Guzzi, also does not waver.
I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever.
Clemens accuses 2 former St. Louis officers beat him to a confession.
That's ridiculous. I categorically deny that. It's absurd.
That statement that Mike Guzzi made on the news broadcast, that Reggie Clemens' allegation that his confession was coerced, was absurd, and that he categorically denied it, really jumps out in this case. I mean, the facts contradict Guzzi's statement. The arraignment judge, who was the first judge that saw Reggie Clemens after he had been interviewed by those police officers, stopped the arraignment proceeding and ordered that Reggie be taken to an emergency room to be treated for his injuries. He stopped the arraignment and ordered that Reggie be taken to an emergency room at a hospital to be treated for his injuries. Reggie was fine when he left his home to go answer the officer's questions. That's never referenced in the story where Mike's comment is made.
I'm not sure about the exact date, but I do know that the judge sent us both to the hospital at the same time. He sent him to the hospital. He issued an order. Judge Michael Davis issued an order for me and Marlon to be taken immediately after our arraignment. So as soon as we got over to the jail, they started processing us, waiting to transport us to the hospital.
I categorically deny that. It's absurd.
And you got 3 young black men terrorizing these white people up on the bridge. Oh, that falls, because they figure predominantly, number one, you're not going to necessarily be poverty level, but a very modest financial means or resources. You're going to be easily intimidated because here's the prosecutor's office. They've got all the power and the control and the money, and they can dictate the mechanics and dynamics of the police department and how they're treated and blah, blah, blah. So there's no such thing as a fair trial.
To give that argument credence is to think that jurors are stupid, that they don't look at the facts, they don't look at the evidence.
I definitely feel that prosecutorial misconduct was evident in this case.
You can just say Nels Moss. Everyone knows what you're talking about.
Prosecutor Nels Moss.
Nels Moss.
Nels Moss.
It's not unusual that they would focus on me, and I don't mind that.
This 2003 report from the Center for Public Integrity blames Moss for misconduct, leading to wrongful convictions. Moss told us the watchdog group got it wrong.
They even cited cases that I didn't even try. That's how poor I considered their research on the issue.
Nels Moss is accused of breaking the rules when he was the assistant St. Louis City Circuit Attorney. And now lawyers for Chain of Rocks Bridge murder suspect Reginald Clemens say it's evidence Clemens did not get a fair trial.
I believe that 1 or 2 rape cases that I tried subsequently were overturned on DNA evidence. That was an identification situation.
Marlon Gray was the first of the 4 co-defendants executed 3 years ago. Antonio Richardson is in jail for life, and the only white defendant, Daniel Winfrey, went to prison but is out on probation.
We believe we have a right to a phone call. We believe in these fundamental things. We believe this is what sets us apart from the rest of the world, what makes us Americans. So for these police officers to take this away from me, it was a shock to my system. I didn't know they could do that.
I'm not charged with murdering anybody. I'm charged with aiding or encouraging. Now, to aid in a murder, you have to be present. The state said I was not. In order to be convicted of encouraging murder, someone has to take the stand and say, Marlon Gray told me to do it, or Marlon Gray said I should murder these people. No one ever testified to that. So the charge of first-degree murder does not stand, which means the death penalty, in this case, can never stand. It doesn't bear scrutiny. It's not seen.
Marlon Gray's last words, reported by the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, was that this is not a death. But
It's a lynching.
It's a lynching.
Sure it was.
So
It was a state-organized murder. Because they didn't have no just cause for killing him. They were given a bunch of prefabricated facts by a crooked attorney and moved and swayed a bunch of jurors that didn't know any better or didn't know all the truth, and Nels Moss kept a lot of the truth away from him, that if he had let us know about it and let those jurors know about the truth,
Our heart goes out to the mother of the Terry sisters. We haven't forgotten that 2 women lost their lives that night. We're not uncompassionate to that. Our heart goes out to them. We are praying that this woman gets the chance to know the truth about how her daughters died. She's been living 14 years with the misconception that her daughters were raped and murdered. That's a long time to be living under the illusion of falsehood. And it was the prosecutor's duty to get that woman the truth about how her children passed from this form to the next. And he didn't do it. Instead of giving this woman the truth, even though it implicated one of her family members, he chose to try to get elected.
I told Marlon I let him down. Marlon said, man, look at this. And he was sitting in a room about this size. It's all glass and closed. And Marlon was sitting there in his blue Dockers and his white t-shirt. And he had letters from people all around the world. And he was about as upbeat. And you could only sit. You had to sit a certain distance away from the wall. And it's like, where I'm sitting here, the door to the execution chamber was no farther than that door right there. And he sat there for 4 days looking at that door. Now, to me, if that isn't cruel and unusual punishment, to sit there and know behind that door is where you're going to die. Because I'll never forget, his last words to me were, when I was talking to him,
Like this.
Nothing in the trial proceedings required that they find me guilty of rape, or that a rape even happened. So the rape is what's supposed to connect me to the murder, but I've never been found guilty of rape. And the prosecutors say I didn't kill anybody, but the rape is supposed to connect me to the murder. That's why I'm trying to get them to take me to trial for the rape. Take me to trial so that I can confront these charges and I can put on the evidence and challenge the evidence that the prosecutor really don't have.